Station 51, engine 27, engine 32, truck 105.
You're listening to The Fire Break with Steve Wolf.
Hey, and welcome back to The Fire Break. I'm Steve Wolf. As you know, The Fire Break is sponsored by, guess what? Team Wildfire. You already knew that because you've been watching, as I think, our 110th episode. Been playing at this for a while. Oh my God. It's making me feel old as if I didn't feel old already. I have got with us Jeff Denholm today. And Jeff has got a product called Strong Water. Why is this important? Because with wildfires increasing as much as they are and suppression technology, between 50 and 200 years out of date, we need new technologies for putting out wildfires, and structural fire as well hasn't changed much. Jeff, welcome to the Fire Break. How are you today?
Morning. Yeah, thank you.
So tell me about, what got you into the fire space?
What got me into the chemical space with our suppressant was fighting fire as a contractor in California. As an engine contractor, I got into the game back in 2008 and started with a water tender on an EERA in California, and then ultimately
What's an EDRA? Just
emergency equipment rental agreement. And then I ultimately moved on to Viper, which is the federal procurement system, virtual incident procurement. And
Viper is like Amazon for firefighters.
Yeah. And it's a federal system for vendors of all types to provide resources for firefighting. And in our case, it was type 3 and type 6 engines and crews. We operate by region within Forest Service regions 5 and 6 out here, which is Washington, Oregon, and California. And so I ran that business up until 2 years ago, and now I'm solely focused on strong water technologies, which makes a suppression agent, and obviously was inspired to develop the chemical through my experiences with wildfire here in California, which seemed to, no matter what we seem to be doing, the propensity and intensity continues to increase, and the losses are going up. So I was inspired to try to help in a broader capacity or a greater capacity over than that of just providing an engine. And we developed a technology that's a suppression tech, a gel for lack of a better term. And it's a force multiplier of water suppression capacity. It gets water to stick and stay. And the real magic is that it can be pumped through proportioners that are typically finicky. Steve, bad news. You hear my neighbors, landscapers are here.
I don't hear them, so don't worry about it.
Okay, good. I was going to say it's
very bad. The audience might hear it, but I can't.
Outside my door, and it happens once a week. And apparently, the podcasting gods are working against us.
Nah, maybe you hear it. I don't. I don't know. Listeners might hear it, but I'm deaf, so.
Okay.
Too much guns.
Yeah. Yep. So we've got
this force multiplier. The idea is put out more fire with less water, which is pretty important because we either don't have enough water or we don't have any water. And so,
I think a lot of people in the fire industry, firefighters, chemicals guys, engineers realized that over the years that gel was really an effective tool for suspending, wrapping, clinging, smothering, water sticking in where the heat is and things like that. But no one had been able to really deliver it in a plug and play capacity, meaning that some of the first generation gels were oil-based, super absorbent polymers, and they clogged proportioners and hoses and nozzles, which is obviously a no-no. They also required specialized equipment to be applied. And so we were fortunate in that a lot of these folks had failed before us. So we sort of had a roadmap to reverse engineer what could potentially work. And what we developed was a rheology modifier. So it's a gel when it comes out of the nozzle. Okay. It's gelified water. But what this real secret sauce is that our product phase changes in viscosity under pressure. So it's a thick, viscous liquid concentrate that we add into the water via a proportioner system. That's the Foam Pro, for instance, are found on most municipal and wildland rigs, especially out here in California. And it flows without any problem through these typically finicky proportioning systems. And so it's an on-demand product or a plug-and-play product that
Right.
doesn't require any further investment or modifications to the firefighter's equipment. And we found that solves, a few of the problems with the first generation gels. And then I guess one of the central components of the product when we started this was I wanted to try to solve the toxicity issues.
Sure.
Firefighter health and safety is a big deal. A lot of first responders in my family, um, and the statistics are bad with cancer in the firefighting industry. I believe that the firefighting industry is one of the highest rates of occupational
Yep.
cancer, which doesn't sit well with me. And then there are environmental impacts when you're proliferating large volumes of retardant into the environment via aircraft. It can pose a lot of problems. So that was an issue we wanted to solve, and we did. We're real proud of the fact that we meet California Prop 65, which is probably the strictest carcinogenic disclosure laws in the country. We recorded the lowest fish kill of any water enhancer approved by the U.S. Forest Service on the QPL, which is the quality products listing. It's a mandatory, almost 2-year testing protocol for any chemical to be used in aviation. You need to pass that test, and it's a de facto litmus or credentials. I mean, almost worldwide. A lot of fire agencies, for better or worse, have been following the Forest Service, their lead, and they utilize the QPL as a a baseline point of credentials in the industry, or
Now,
qualification, really.
so let's talk. It's the QPL. I think it's the qualified product list.
Right,
So
qualified.
it's a long and expensive process to get through that.
Yep.
And I wonder if that kind of functions somewhat like an FDA, where if you don't have the money to put your product through, you're never going to get on the list. But that doesn't mean that what you came up with, isn't safe and effective. It's just,
No, it is a barrier to entry.
yeah,
I'll tell you, I'm having a lot of conversations with some of the folks, like Josh Wilkins, and we feel like there needs to be a more streamlined approach to shepherding innovation into the firefighting industry and market. We're not suggesting people cut corners, but it seems like that there should be a more efficient and fair manner in which to vet technologies, certainly chemicals, coming into the industry. And it is, for a small company, it's a big barrier to entry. It's expensive and time consuming. We got
what,
through it though.
what does it
And
cost to
I'll
get
tell
through
you,
that?
the guys we worked with at the Forest Service were really great guys and very professional, and they're doing a good job. It's just we feel like it's a limiting. We feel like this has just got to be more of a pathway to innovation,
Yeah,
for obvious reasons, especially in the wildland space.
yeah. No one's suggesting cut corners, but there are probably faster, less expensive ways to go about this.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
so when did you come up with the current recipe?
Well, it's a good story. The inception story, the founder story is pretty cool. Um, I have a unique background as an athlete, and I represent a clothing company called Patagonia, and they're really active in the environmental space and always have been. They reinvest a lot of their revenue and profits back into environmental causes globally, and they have been doing so for a long, long time. So there's a lot of resources within the company that I was able to tap into early on, and I got challenged by one of my colleagues at the company, saying, I was talking about the proliferation of these chemicals in the state, the negligible benefits that I had seen they were providing, and the impact, the negative impact. He said, well, what are you going to do about it? I said, I'm a retired merchant marine. I'm not a chemist. I'm not a scientist. And he's like, well, hell, the founder of this company dropped out of high school, and he's a multi-billionaire now and doing a lot of really good for the world. And it built a world-class company and world-class products. And, he didn't finish high school. So the challenge was there. And ultimately, in that initial conversation, it was suggested to me that I go talk to a man named Rick Ridgway, who's the head, at the time was the head of the environmental group at Patagonia. Interesting guy, really intelligent, was a world-class climber. The company was founded by 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐜𝐫𝐤, who was these guys were pioneers in the big wall climbing in Yosemite,
Sure.
and were adventurers all over the world. And there are a group of them that, ironically, many of them went on to become extremely successful entrepreneurs. Well, Rick Ridgway, the head of the environment, I bopped into his office on a Monday morning and suggested someone had said, hey, go talk to Rick. He might know some folks that could help you. Well, I knocked on his door, said, hey, Rick, I'm here. Jeff Denholm, one of the surf ambassadors to the company. I'm in the firefighting game trying to solve this chemical issue. And he goes, Jeff, I think I may know somebody who's actually an expert on this subject. And he literally picks up his phone, calls a woman named Arlene Bloom, who's a PhD chemist at Berkeley. And she's founder of the Green Science Policy Institute. And she was actually a driving force behind Prop 65 legislation in California. Well, it turns out I went from, this far-fetched idea at the time, just an idea. I hadn't even, really put a pen to paper yet. And then all of a sudden, it turns out Arlene's one of the foremost minds on toxic retardants in the world. And here I go from this idea, I'm way out in left field, to all of a sudden ground zero in like one day. And so I'm on the phone with her. She suggested we meet for lunch. She's in Berkeley. I live in Santa Cruz. So I ended up having lunch with her, and she educated me in a couple hours about toxic retardants across all different classes and all different areas of industry. And she suggested that, this was a worthy thing to undertake. And moreover, she came on my board. She added credibility to the company right out of the gates, and helped bring me to a network of investors who were focused on environmental issues. So I was able, not from that first initial sort of quirky meeting at Patagonia, I went from 0 to 100 in like a week. And so it was clear to me then that this project was choosing me. And I went into it with starry eyes and pretty naive at the time, which was good because it helped me.
Yeah.
I think if I had known all the barriers to entry at the time, I would have not gone down the path. So I continued to fight fire as a contractor while simultaneously building. The parent company is 𝐿TIRA Systems, 𝐿TIRA, 𝐿TIRA. And 𝐿TIRA is I like the Native American history. I've read a lot of books, and it's the Pawnee Indian goddess, mother protector of the earth. And then our DBA is Strong Water Technologies. And we make a couple different products, a strong water ground and a strong water aviation products, which are, for lack of a better term, a gel. In the Forest Service eyes, we're a water enhancer technology. And I call it a suppression agent, because it's really, that's where we shine, is in actually suppressing fire and direct engagement on flames. It can be used in exposure protection. It can be sprayed onto structures proactively to prevent them from burning from embers or direct flame impingement. And in an urban firefighting and close quarters, if you've got one burning structure, you could easily apply a layer of our product onto the adjacent buildings to protect them, prevent them from burning. We've shown a 6 to 8x multiple over plain water and Class A foam in suppression, and that's in an exterior environment. One area of testing that we are in the process of now that we're funded effectively. Since the LA fires, a lot of the doors opened up and things are trending in the right direction for us. But interior suppression in closed quarters with the steam that comes off the fire from the water engagement,
Yeah.
the steam's impregnated with our product, and we found that it lowers the ambient temperatures and survivable rates in seconds. And we were able to suppress a massive internal Connex fire with literally 2 gallons of water because of the
Wow.
steam effect and the way that it absorbs the heat. And so we're really, even though the product was obviously inspired by my experience with wildfire, and I didn't go to a fire academy, so I'm not a structural firefighter, but to me, one of the most valuable performance metrics is going to be in that structural market. And if we can take the class A and B foams out, and replace them with something that's non-carcinogenic, biodegradable, and a higher performing tool that gets firefighters out of burning structures quicker, lowers the risk for flashover. You can actually fog their way into a building and create a tunnel of exposure protection that
Yep.
will be less susceptible to burn over, and it provides them an egress in and out of, say, a large complex structure where they're having to get to the head of the fire. So there are a lot of really powerful performance metrics that the product offers over Class A foams, which are found on most structural engines. And so, and again, it pumps right through their systems without any changing of equipment and things like that. It's just calibrating the systems for the product, and you have to thoroughly clean out other chemicals. It doesn't cross-pollinate well at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it basically works off of the specific gravity of water, and just the idea that it takes a lot of energy to heat water to get that phase change.
Right.
And right, that if you can build up essentially a layer of water that's been mechanically enhanced, then water is the barrier agent, and
Right.
the gel is just holding the water in place.
Yes, it's a carrier of the water, and we can get easily 3/8 inch thick
Yeah.
coating on ceilings on glass. It sticks really well. You can dial up the proportioner, but typically we'd run for exposure protection at like 1.5 to 2% max
Okay.
per gallon. And then we did aerial drops with 𝐟𝐸𝐵𝐿, and we found that for the best for dispersion was like 1.0 to 1.5. And we were really happy with the dispersion. Was really even when it came down with the Dixie cup in the field
Yeah.
tests. And then it also survived the rotor wash from these large 𝐾𝐨𝐧'𝐭s really
Okay.
well. So we were inspired there, and that was before we had the QPL. We just passed the Forest Service QPL last May.
Congratulations on that. It's
Yeah,
huge,
thank
huge accomplishment.
Yeah, thank you.
So the technology is somewhat familiar to me. I was a Hollywood stunt and special effects coordinator for a long time, and I apprenticed under a gentleman named Dr. 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞. He invented something called 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞, for which he got an Academy Award in 1986. And 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞 is essentially strong water for stunt people. So when you see a person on fire, prior to the invention of 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞, they would actually be wearing an asbestos suit. So talk about things that are environmentally unfriendly to the user.
Yeah.
But he basically just thickened water so you could build up a 3/8 to half-inch layer of water on you, and then you put your fuel impregnated clothes on top of that and light it on fire. And basically the gel allowed water to absorb that heat and retain it before it passed the heat on to the wearer. So
Yeah,
very, very similar technology.
Yeah, you mentioned the asbestos suit. There are class action lawsuits happening right now in the fire industry. Nomex suits that were impregnated with PFAS.
Yeah.
And so firefighters, it's been proven that they were absorbing the PFAS transdermally from wearing these Nomex suits. And so there's still issues today around the health and safety of firefighters, or someone dealing with fire, something that's supposed to protect them is actually in the end harming them. So that's still going on.
Well,
And
let's see.
we're looking to tackle the PFAS issues with a Class B product. And obviously, we'll need to get a
Right.
military spec to address that. The DoD's got some issues on their hand with groundwater contamination, and we're looking to help them try to solve those problems in the future. I mean, we're really Strongwater Technologies is positioned as a green chemistry provider for the firefighting industry. That's our mission. That's our mission
It's a
statement.
great mission. So you
Yeah.
start with this idea, then you catch this lucky break of meeting Dr. Bloom.
Mhm.
She educates you on toxicity. She doesn't tell you what to do instead, right? She just tells you this is what not to do.
Well,
Uh,
yeah, she said it was it was a fight worth fighting, and she
okay.
inspired me. Yeah, inspired me for sure. And she'd been fighting a lot of these chemicals over the years, and um, different classes of chemicals. So it was an inspiring conversation. And again, I was pretty starry-eyed and naive at the time, so I dove in head first. I happened to meet some really, um, trusting investors, because
Yep.
I had like a paragraph treatment on a piece of paper, and I didn't even know what a P&L was at the time, or a pro forma, or a pitch deck,
Yeah.
and it's completely naive. And so I had some luminary investors. Nell Newman, Paul's daughter, from Newman's Own Organics, was one of the first checks. She wrote literally after breakfast in an idea. I just said, "This is my idea." She wrote me a check. So without people like her in the world willing to take chances like that with their money, um, yeah,
I'm familiar with the experience. When we were building the hurricane technology, I literally had a crayon drawing, that I shared with Tim Draper, and he sent the first check.
wow,
Yes, this is pre Techstars, pre anything. Same position as you. Knew nothing. I didn't know what a pitch deck or anything was.
yeah,
But it's quite an education you pick up once you have that idea and you have to enter that world of venture capital and investors and whatnot.
yeah.
It's
Raising
a
money, raising money
steep
is a
learning curve, right?
man. Yeah, I, you know, we're we're in a much better position now. But yeah, the fundraising part of this business is a whole nother business. It's like there's
Yep.
running the business, building the technology, working on the company, and then there's fundraising, which is a whole nother, it's like two jobs.
Yeah.
And living here, like with my association at Patagonia, I was really lucky, got some checks right out of the gate from some high net worth tree huggers, I call them, great people, and very trusting. Um, but then when you start to get into larger dollars, and you start to swim with the VC money, I'm in Santa Cruz, so I'm right over the hill from Silicon Valley. That was a whole nother education.
Sure. And did you decide you were going to tackle both of them, or did you ever think about, I'll handle the product and then I'll get somebody else to handle the fundraising?
I did
Did
it
you,
all.
you did it all.
Yeah, yeah.
So that made it even harder. So what was the next break that you caught?
From the initial seed round, well, I was able to just continue raising money as we had tested the product. It took us like 6 years to crack the nut with the formula. And remember, I'm working full time, fighting fire, running a contracting business. So I was dividing my time between the two, and then I was also working full time, if you will, as an athletic surfer for Patagonia, professional surfer. So, and doing environmental work that in and around the company, and being involved in a lot of the things that they do. So I was wearing three hats, right?
Yeah.
And so that I think if I had been solely focused on Atira and Strongwater, things may have progressed more quickly. But it is what it is, and I had to make a living, and so I had to wear three hats, and it took a lot more time than I would have preferred. But
Sure.
in that time, I think I'm much better prepared now to run a company, and I'm surrounding myself with really smart people. I think is one of the keys to being an entrepreneur is you got to believe in yourself enough to do, and crazy enough to do it, and you have to be stubborn.
Yep.
You also have to
Stubborn
be
and
humble enough.
optimistic, right?
Yeah, and you also have to be humble enough to
Yes.
realize you need to surround yourself with people that are a lot smarter than you, and know the industry better than you, or know chemistry better than you, can spin a spreadsheet and numbers better than you, and inspire them, and then get behind them. Lead from the front, but you can't be afraid to let people take the lead. And like, quite frankly, with some of the folks I have working for me now, they drive me, and they're elevating my game because they're so good at what they do.
So you coalesce the right people and bring what you need out of them. It's maybe a lot like being a movie director. They might not know how to act, how to run the camera, how to do the lighting, how to do the electric, they don't know how to do any of the skills, but they bring all the people that they need together that have those skills, and then they pull what they need out of them, and hopefully, head to the Oscars.
Yeah, it is. Young chemist that I met years ago that's been sort of moonlighting for me, that now I invited him to join the company as a COO and a partner, really. I mean, the kid's so sharp. His name's Jake Lamers. He's a degree in chemistry, and he's been working in tech in Silicon Valley. So in the trenches of these large corporations that are really competitive environments, cutting edge environments, big money, gnarly timelines. And so, he's battle tested and battle hardened, but yet still young enough to have all this energy. He's on really sharp with the AI and helping us streamline the company and build up in operations to build out the platform to go to market, which is where we are right now.
Okay. So you guys can ask what's the next hurdle?
Yeah, well, we are going to market, just moving the company to Reno. Of our mixing facility. We're going to be installing all the equipment into a warehouse here in the next couple of months, and preparing to deliver initially to the structural market. So as a Class A foam replacement, that's our focus for now.
Excellent.
I mean, ultimately, we'd like to work in wildfire and aviation, but there are certain challenges that need to be addressed before we're ready to go to that dance.
I see. And how did you pick Reno?
Well, taxes, cost. I mean, the cost of doing business in California is really high. Just a warehouse alone is, like in the Bay Area, is double the cost it is in Reno. And I like the Tahoe area.
Yeah.
I'm a skier and outdoorsman, so I've got a lot of contacts up there. And, I live on the coast, but anywhere here is just too cost prohibitive. And it's also a central location, because in wildfire, ultimately, the core of the company's focused on wildfire. That's a great location with Utah, Idaho. Sure. It's just the center of the wagon wheel, if you will.
Yeah, and Tahoe is funding some really innovative wildfire mitigation and prevention projects.
Yeah, with BurnBot, right? And and they're obviously real environmentally focused up there.
With Tahoe Fund.
With the watershed, Yep, Amy Berry.
Yes, Amy.
Amy's a great girl. I just recently had a call with her, and she's helping us. And we intend to grow out, geographically from our base, and obviously working with the fire departments in the Tahoe Basin is our number one focus right now. San Bernardino, Santa Barbara. We did a pilot program with San Bernardino Chief Shane Glaze, sort of a rock star. He wouldn't like me saying this, but a legend in the firefighting industry, a humble guy. He's retired now. Took the product on for several years and used it in structural protection for on Type 6s. They had a task force there. We had a lot of success, and we learned a lot about the product and tweaked it and optimized it through the experiences there. And then ultimately, I raised the money to get through the QPL a couple years ago. And now, since the QPL has been completed, the elections are over, the LA fires hit, and a lot of the money shook loose.
Yeah.
So we've just had a lot of success with the fundraising, and so it's pedal to the metal now.
Right. What did it cost to get through the QPL?
A little less than 200 in 2 years.
And how much variance is allowed? So you've got your product dialed in, right? You go through the QPL, and now all of a sudden you're fighting hotter, drier wind, and you need to tweak the formula a little bit to deal with, changing evaporation rates, etc.
We can't.
How much can you tweak, if any?
Zero. You
without
can't
having to go through a new QPL.
change the formula, right? Yeah, that would be that
Can you
would
change
need,
the ratio?
yeah, in the water, of course.
Okay. Okay.
But no formula change would be that would be a problem.
Okay.
So, well, if any new formulas until the criteria changes in the industry, if it were to change, any new formula's got to run through the Forest Service. We do
Would
third
it take
party,
just as
do our
long
own,
on a minor change?
yeah, we do our own independent testing. We can get that done quicker with private third party testing labs than going through the Forest Service because, they're handling a lot of different products at the same time and their resources are limited. And then there are shelf life. There are portions of the testing that just
Mhm.
take more time, that take months and months. So stability, shelf life, they look at the product's tolerance to heat and cold and things like that. So our products really, really durable. Is it like a minimum of a 6 to 8 year shelf life? It
That's good.
separates a little bit. You can shake it up by hand in a 5-gallon pail and reapply it. I used it. I lived in Bonnie Doon up in the redwood forest above Santa Cruz. In August 2020, the CZU fire complex broke out, and I lived right in the middle of it. Ignored the evacuation orders. Used a slip in my Ford Raptor and turned my personal truck into a fire engine and spent 10 days running around very narrow, winding mountain roads of my community fighting the CZU fire with my product. And I happened to have a bunch on a pallet sitting out behind my barn that had, like, if you know Bonnie Doon, it can go from 40 degrees in the winter at night on rainy nights to 115 in the
Wow.
summer.
That's
So
a product test right there, isn't it?
yeah, ranges, extreme ranges. And so I used that product, shook it up, and it flowed perfectly. The slip-in had a Foam Pro unit with a 200-gallon water tank and a 30-gallon product tank, and it worked great. I mean, I was able to apply product to a lot of structures in grass and fuel loads to prevent my neighbors' homes from burning down.
So with a 30-gallon product tank, you can make 3,000 gallons of
Yeah,
finished product, right?
yeah, and it kept continually having to fill. Obviously, the water tank was having such a
Right.
small tank. But yeah, that was a hair-raising 10 days for sure. My house was safe. It kind of burned up and around me, but there are all these canyons that feed up into the redwood forests from the coast, and our prevailing winds are northwesterly here. And we were very fortunate that the day that the fire actually worked its way down the ridgeline from Pescadero north of us in San Francisco along the peninsula, literally the day the fire reached us, the winds died. And if they hadn't, it would have been
Wow.
a whole different story.
Yeah.
Our northwesterlies can blow, 10 to 20 knots on average, you know,
Yeah.
and those just that wind funneling up those canyons. And it would have been bad. It would have been a lot worse than it was. So we were able to hold our
Very
ground.
lucky. Very
Yeah.
lucky. Do you still surf?
Oh, yeah. I mean, ruined my life surfing.
All
I
right, let
probably
me.
would have had a PhD in chemistry if it wasn't for surfing. But
So tell
um,
me, what did you learn from your surfing experience that served you in your startup experience?
uh, well, it's interesting you asked that. So the DBA Strongwater is sort of the nexus of a lot of things in my life. I was a merchant marine as a young man, plying my trade on the Bering Sea in Alaska. And uh, in as part of that career, I was hurt. I lost my dominant arm on a shipboard accident in a big storm. And so Strongwater, I guess, in a way, was responsible for one of the most impactful events of my life. Um, and Strongwater is also the sort of the nexus of a place that I find a lot of joy. A bit commercial diver. Post injury, I worked as an archaeological diver for years. Went to dive school. I grew up on the water skiing, swimming, diving, surfing, kiteboarding. So it's sort of the nexus of all these things that inspire me as an athlete. And then obviously ultimately landed me a position with Patagonia, which was a huge honor. Their bar is very high as it relates to who they bring on as athletic ambassadors. And I like to surf larger waves. I've been active in the quote big wave surfing community for a long time. I like to surf 30, 40, 50-foot waves. I'm getting older, starting to dial that back, starting to realize I've got nothing to prove, certainly to myself anymore. And, and my calling with this company, I feel like, is much more important than athletics or action sports at this stage of the game for me. And so that stuff's sort of taken a back seat, but that strong water name is central to a lot of things in my life, which is why I came up with it, quite frankly. So it's been, it's not over yet, hopefully, but it's just
starting.
Yeah, it's just starting. And
it's a slow start, isn't it?
The new chapter of my life. This entrepreneurial thing's been going on for like 10 years with Strongwater, and it's been the most challenge in a life full of challenging things. It's been one of the most challenging.
And hopefully
the guys over the hill here, that these entrepreneurs they're crazy, And I feel like an imposter because I am like a college dropout, as a blue collar guy working as a merchant marine, climbing the ladder through that system. And then with the commercial diving, it was a blue collar trade school thing. I feel like an imposter because I'm certainly pitching these guys that are venture capitalists with MBAs and engineering degrees and all these credentials. But the longer I've been in the game, the more I realize that there are, it's not necessarily about your credentials. It's about your commitment, your passion, your grit, obviously your intuition, and, ultimately what inspires you, that defines you as an entrepreneur. So,
and a lot of the guys you're talking about, they're really, many of those folks, because they've made their money in Silicon Valley with software, have come to believe that software is the solution for everything.
Yeah.
And very few people in the fire space now are actually dealing with the physical reality of fire.
Yeah. It's interesting to see where all the money goes.
Into space, literally.
Yeah. It's like, drones.
Right.
It's like, I don't know how many drone companies there are. And some of them are doing great work. A lot of VC money just flying into like, oh, we're investing in drones,
right.
or cameras or AI or, detection. And,
right. Yeah. Observational technology, I call it.
Yeah.
Cameras, sensors, satellites, drones. Okay, so we got to look at the fire. Now, what do we do?
I think there's room for improvement across the board.
Sure.
And it's going to take an ecosystem of advancement to crack this nut and to do better against these climate-driven issues, right? Whether you believe humans are affecting the climate or not, the climate is changing.
That's no doubt.
There's no debate. Climate's changing, and if you live in California, you're ground zero.
Yep.
And so there's no denying that, and we're just simply trying. I mean, our company's mission statement is beyond the green chemistry is to give firefighters better tools, right?
Yeah,
these first responders are incredible people, and that's for me to be a part of this culture, even in an ancillary capacity as a contractor, and now as a provider of tools within the industry as a huge honor. They're like, these guys are the real deal, and they've got big problems on their plates. Like with Shane and San Bernardino, you have 1 million people living there. And when this shit hits the fan, it's on your shoulders to protect them all, to make the right decisions, to utilize the resources you have at hand to it's like going to battle. It's serious stuff.
Absolutely. Yep.
Really impressive to watch them would be on these incident command centers on these large fires. It's really cool,
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And you say an ancillary part, it's like It's the equivalent of they're going to battle and you're making the ammo.
Trying better
Right,
bullet.
right. Yeah, and you're
right.
saying, I hope this stuff works for you, and give me feedback, and let me know what we can do better
Yeah,
to support your
100%.
effort. Yeah, because you're the guys out there doing the fight.
Yep. I mean, culturally, this firefighting service has been slow to innovate.
Yep.
I mean, but when you consider that lives are on the line, you understand why. I mean, these guys aren't fire chiefs, and the authorities within the industry aren't consumers that are leaping at the latest widget, right? These guys are like military officers where they have people's lives in their hands, and they make slow, methodical decisions based on tried and true policies that save lives. And so they're not going to jump at the latest widget, and they're not, you know, they're not flippant about the decisions they make, and for good reason. And so we've got to earn their trust, and you've got to prove the value and the credibility of your product, because this is a life and death. These are life and death situations.
Absolutely. But look at the medical industry. They've adopted a lot of new technology a lot faster, and
Yeah.
it's the same thing. It's life and death, but they've got the gamma knife, and they've got the CAT scans, and the this and that. I mean, like a lot of sophisticated life-saving equipment moves faster there, but maybe that it's assisted by the fact that there's some profit motive as well. And there's no profit motive in the fire service. It's just
No, I appreciate, that's what I like the best about it. That's the purity of the industry. Like when I was in college, I did do a couple years of college. I had a public speaking class. It was a debate class actually, and as part of one of my, it was funny because the professor that held the class approached me after I gave my presentation and said, "What the hell are you doing here?" Because I said one of my primary objectives in life was to avoid the 5 C's, which was commuting, cubicles, and conforming corporate culture. Right?
yeah.
So I was wary of the corporatocracy, I call it now, which the money that runs our government, right? Our democracy that's run by private industry. I was aware at 19 that was something I needed to avoid. And so there's a purity in the firefighting community in that they're not out for profit. They're out for public safety, which is a big deal. And so I'm avoiding the 5 C's by remaining remaining within the culture of firefighting.
Yeah, I'm safely escaped from that as well.
Yeah.
Right. So you can either call it self-employed or self-unemployed, but
Self-unemployed.
right, unemployable.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I get to meet cool people like you. I tell you the biggest blessing so far with this has been the characters that I've met, like Shane, Blake, like these legendary firefighters, and then even the VC guys that said no. But like I got to meet some big time guys that are super smart and cutting edge and in the mix with stuff that affects all of humanity, and then right down to your average wildland firefighter that's out there digging in the dirt, sucking smoke. It's I mean, the real silver lining to this has been all these really interesting people that I've met and I've learned from, and who have helped me grow and have challenged me. If I hadn't taken this on, would I? It's made me a better person so far, which was desperately needed.
It changes your hearing though too.
Yeah.
You lose the ability to hear no.
Yeah.
No just goes right over your head, and you're just you're just out hunting for the
no. And there's problems, right? Like I surf 50-foot waves with one arm, so no's not in the vocabulary.
Exactly. What a great note to wrap that up on. No's not in the vocabulary, right? Well, Jeff, I really appreciate you taking the time to join me here on the Fire Break today.
Thank you. Yeah, Steve. I look forward to working with you in the future on your innovative efforts in the fire space, and really appreciate the time and your interest in our product. It means a lot, and giving me a voice here is certainly appreciated and helpful. Thank you.
Big fan of the work you're doing, and it has nothing to do with the product. I mean, I hope the product is great and it makes a difference, but what I think, we really tip our hat to is, people who jump into the arena and take on the big problems. Whether you win or lose, it's the bravery to
Mhm.
jump in there and donate large chunks of your life to battling for something that's important to you. And
Yeah, roger that.
that's the lesson, man.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks so much, and thank you all for joining us here on the Fire
Yeah.
Break.
Okay.
Jeff, say again.
Yeah. No, I said okay. Thank you very much. Have a
You
great
bet.
day. Okay.
Awesome. Jeff Denholm with Strong Water. Look for this product. Check it out. Get in touch with Jeff, and I'll put a link right here so you can find him. You've been listening or hopefully watching the Fire Break. I'm Steve Wolf, and we'll see you at the next one.